Verdict a bit much.
So what are we discussing again, or what are we rather arguing
so-
about this morning?
Actually, not arguing, but we thought it's in the newsroom. We thought it's a good time to try and pontificate or think about what could happen to risk assets per se, worldwide and in India, post this election verdict. And as things stand, by the way, I just came in, so I have the advantage of doing that. I was looking at the two global channels and what they are predicting. So Fox News is at 267 for Donald Trump and 210 for Kamala Harris, or Republicans and Democrats. And CNN is at 246,
247 now.
247 for Donald Trump and 210 odd for Kamala Harris. So there is a lead, not decided, but there is a lead.
From what I just saw, I think Trump is already preparing for his speech.
Incidentally,
Well,
Kamala Harris is not giving a speech today.
She's delayed it. So that if that's anything to go by, and if you have to believe the IT stocks in the Indian market and the trader, then I think Trump has taken the cake. But what do you do, right? If you're an Indian investor, yes,
What do you do?
we were very concerned about the markets are falling. We had hit oversold territory. I don't think we gained yesterday because of an anticipation that be pushing it, anticipating a Trump victory before the
Remove
rest
the
of the
shorts,
world.
maybe. Remove the shorts, maybe.
Remove the shorts because we were oversold. This morning we started off with a pretty solid bang. IT became the star trade. And from what we understand, if Trump is in power, very simply put, right, the biggest overhang for tech companies in the last couple of quarters, and everyone has said this to us, where we need clarity, we need the US elections behind us before we go out and get some clarity on deal making. If taxes are cut, companies will spend more money, discretionary spend picks up, the rupee gets weaker. All of this is a win-win if you're a US Indian IT company. So I think that simple trade, buy tech stocks are all 3% higher, but I think there is still opportunity in the next couple of weeks or next couple of quarters to make money off this sector.
So the other pharma, rather the other sector that comes into focus is pharma, because there's all sorts of conjecture around the Democrats putting a cap on pricing, but we must not forget that Donald Trump, maybe a few months ago, had said that he's going to go after big pharma.
Big pharma.
And that
No, not
means
just that. Even Rob Junior, right? RFK Junior.
Yes. So it's not like there's going to be, a pro only if, Trump comes through for pharma. We're certainly going to see more caps coming through. And I reckon that this is one of his election plays as well when it comes to healthcare, because he's looking at healthcare in a different way. Of course, the Democrats have a way of looking at healthcare from the insurance perspective. One more sector that we've not spoken enough about is defense.
So no, are we saying pharma negative?
No, yes, pharma is negative irrespective of comes.
So pharma is
The
not as
only
constructive.
caveat that,
Yeah.
for example, Sridhar Sivram was saying this, that RFK Jr., who is the running mate, if you can call him
Yeah.
that, right? His big plank has been that he doesn't trust big pharma as much,
Yeah.
right? And therefore, if that happens, does the a whole host of patents that have been filed, etc., do they come into question, and therefore do Indian generic makers
Then get a step
get
into the
a
door.
step into? So
Yeah.
that's the quote-unquote antidote to this very
almost
popular
like a-
theory.
so, yeah.
It's negative pharma, but maybe there is a sliver of hope.
So I think sentimentally it may be negative, but the fact remains that it's not going to impact businesses in a big way. So maybe sell pharma may not be a good trade to execute at this stage.
As simple as buy IT. maybe.
As simple as
Buy IT
blanket
was.
buy IT. But actually, why don't both of you come in? It's easy to go buy the IT index. I mean, that's the simplest trade on the street. But if one has to be selective at this stage, why don't you give me your two favorites and you give me your two favorites? Because then it's easy to execute, right? I don't know whether one should buy an Infi, whether should you buy an Emphasis, buy an LTM90 or Coforge. You want to try this, and there are a few in the future space, there are some in the cash market, so you should be mindful of that too.
Yeah, so I mean, not giving a prediction per se, but I would suspect that BFSI spend could come back, right? No matter what happens to what corporate get tax money, BFSI spend comes back. So anybody having a larger
Exposure.
sliver of BFSI on the product side or on the IT services side could do well. So from an Emphasis, which has got insurance and BFSI in a big way, to Persistent on the smaller side, to an Infi, fairly large on the BFSI side. Right?
LTM Mindtree is also getting very excited, Neeraj. I don't know whether they have a big chunk in BFSI.
They do,
but
they do.
seem
They do.
to be focused. I mean, the stock is gaining on significant volumes today.
Yes,
Yeah,
PFSI as well as the US. In fact, all the top 5 big IT companies who have the majority of their exposure in BFSI and in US, being the largest
So I
market.
think this could be one sector that will retain its pride, right?
You're saying something else.
But I did want to point out defense because of Rajnath Singh saying that he wants to focus more on exports. And Republicans, as we know from the previous many tenures, they also tend to allocate a lot more towards defense. And I'm not sure, of course, technologically, we're not there when the US is, but we may just get a foot in the door when it comes to names like BEL who supply parts. And now it does seem like they're starting to get a lot more recognition in the kind of quality that are coming up with their own products. So maybe not missiles, but certainly defense parts, which potentially could see some exports towards the US. But that's notwithstanding
Yeah.
the potential tariffs that could also come through that Donald
Yeah.
Trump is
And
threatening us.
this may sound a little more blanket, but of course, and I'm just sort of it's sum of parts, right? We know Trump's dislike for China. If they're going to slam China with a 60% tariff hike,
Yeah.
we stand to gain because it seems like everything that is China's loss for some reason becomes India's win.
Yeah.
All through October, our biggest worry was that China, the dragon, was coming back alive, right? But if Trump is in power, that story should start unraveling and the money should flow back into India if it has to flow to risk on trade in these
Yeah.
markets.
100%. Two things out there, though, very interesting. One I picked up, and one is a thought. What I picked up was that a lot of Chinese companies set up shop in Mexico to export to US
Yeah.
to escape the
building a
tariffs.
wall, no?
Yeah, so if that also gets blocked out, Indian companies may
Stand to
benefit
gain.
per se. So that is one big benefit that comes in for manufacturing per se. So that may do well. Sorry, I forgot the other one. But on defense, the thing is, does it happen that he comes in, Donald Trump comes in, if he goes and wins, and shuts the war, whichever shape or
Exactly what
form,
I'd imagine.
what would that do to defense demand? So does that kind of
Now the good
Sure.
thing is with India's defense still in early days, right? We've very recently turned self-sufficient in so many ways in Atmanirbhar. But the fact remains that I think while it may not stand to gain or lose from what happens in the US, because I don't think we expect a chunk of produce to that market. The geographies that India is exporting to is largely the Middle East. And of course, the Russia, Ukraine parts of the world. I don't think we do too much exposure to the US, but who's to tell what changes? I think one thing we all know is Bank Nifty is doing really well, irrespective of what is happening in the US. The dollar rupee is weakening, which is a good thing if you're an exporter. And more importantly, the index has reclaimed 24,400. I'm trying to not get too excited, but it seems like today may be a good day, but we're back.
Samina, the dollar strength may be yet another reason why IT is down.
Exactly what I said.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
In
So
fact,
that's
that
an
is the
important point
primary
that you-
reason.
Yeah.
So the dollar rupee is going to be important, and if there's inflation's a worry, the US dollar index gets stronger. Even the rupee is a controlled currency, and most tech companies go in hedged. The fact remains that sentimentally it's a positive. So all in all, I think if you're in Bangalore, if you're a tech player, you are laughing your way to the bank
You know,
because
this
you've
morning,
just gotten richer.
this morning we were talking to Mithul Kotecha, and he said that in general, overall, Indian markets and the Indian economy is very well shielded, and irrespective of who comes into power, we're not going to see as much of an impact on Indian markets and the Indian economy because we have our own course, we have our own economy, and and we're kind of decoupled in many ways from what's happening in the US. So that stood out for me, and yeah.
Just last, by the way, feel free to send your questions. A couple of minutes left. So one of the questions is something that we were discussing, that which sectors to invest in as Trump leads. It's a good question because it says Trump leads and not a victory
Wins.
because we don't have that as yet. But I think some of what we discussed in the last 5 minutes kind of indicate that, right? IT services, to an extent healthcare, maybe a bit of defense chipped in, and manufacturing, because China plus one, China tariffs, all of that should help Indian manufacturing in a big way.
Yeah.
And if he's building walls, then any of those raw materials that could come from India become an opportunity for investors to make money.
Yeah, so that is one thing for sure. Are there concerns? Is the question that's coming, that should there be any concerns when it comes to this as Trump leads again? I'm trying to think.
Concerns from market angle.
Markets angle, of course.
Very unlikely. I don't think we should
Geopolitically, we are
I mean,
fine.
like Mithul said this morning, right? We seem to be well insulated from the world, and we saw that in October. The Nasdaq was making record highs. India lost out 8% in
Yeah.
gains. So, indicating that we live in our own little bubble, and we seem to be comfortable around that. No risk until there's a geopolitical stress happening. But from
Which
what
I
I
don't
understand,
foresee.
our Prime Minister and Trump do share a very healthy relationship.
So again, the guess here is that U.S. yields are expected to go higher if Trump comes through, and yields are expected to come off if Kamala Harris comes in. My question is that does that have any sort of an indirect impact on the way our interest rate trajectory could come through? I'm not sure.
So
It's
maybe
too much
not,
to
because our
kind of judge.
governor has maintained in the last two policies.
Actually,
Yeah.
bless you again. Bless you. But good time to sneeze, by the way. But here's the deal, right? Think of this. I mean, for all the people who've given brickbats saying that the RBI is not cutting, hey, Governor Das was
He called it.
clairvoyant. He's saying, let's err on the side of caution.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
are not really on a trajectory downwards. We've been normal. If there is a rate hike again in the
Right.
US,
Yeah.
if anything, it's easier to hike rates from a stance that we
Yeah.
are at versus being in a downward trajectory.
No, and he's maintained that he's going to play it for what's important to our country. And the fact remains, well, historically, the mother market is what is followed to keep the currency differential in check.
Yeah.
But now that the rupee is so controlled in so many ways, and we've sort of decoupled even in that sense, right? FIs don't anymore move the dollar rupee pair as much. So keeping that in mind, I think the governor was right when he said, "I'm not going to do what the
I'm
Fed
thinking
does."
post March 2020, how well have we been on policy? We did not go out and give dole outs.
Crisis management.
We didn't go out and give dole outs in a big way, which was great. We haven't cut rates right now, which is great. India's not been the center point of inflation.
Yeah.
And in the current cycle as well, we haven't gone out and cut rates in a meaningful way.
And also one
It's been
quick
great
one that
Indian policy making.
one quick one which could be an input to policy, but also more importantly, Trump has constantly maintained that he wants to increase US oil production. If there's more supply coming in, crude prices will head lower. If crude prices head lower, that's again a huge positive for India's macros, right? So keeping that in mind, I think that's another positive. One asset class that we heard about yesterday from Ajay Kedia is gold could be on the sell side, because the last time Trump won, gold declined 8%. And this morning, every trading call from the commodity analyst has been sell gold, buy silver.
It's interesting because the pre-election Trump trade was go long gold.
Yeah.
They
Because-
didn't know Governor
No.
Das, did they?
No, but that notwithstanding, I mean, it's interesting, perplexing to
No,
see.
I mean, the reason why a lot of these people bought gold was because yields were heading lower, and they wanted to find another avenue in which
Safe
they
haven.
could invest. Correct, safe haven, exactly that. And if the U.S. dollar was weakening, of course, before now, and if the yields were coming off, then obviously a lot of those funds were diverted to gold. Now that we're expecting yields to go higher and the dollar index is also moved up, well, there you have it. You're expecting a little bit of weakness in gold at least.
So while we are
I'm
not
not sure though. I don't know. I don't think gold looks. I mean, I don't know about a trading
But the
downside.
thing is, I think once the
but-
uncertainty is behind us, if we do believe geopolitical stress will come down, there is clarity in the White House, it just sort of will start coming up. And also, let's not forget, while we could attribute this to various reasons, the fact is gold has had a fantastic run.
China,
has.
central
It's
banks
time
have
to
bought
take some
gold.
profit
Oh yeah,
off
I
the
remember.
table.
Sorry, just one last thing. I remember what I wanted to say. The other thing, that if there is a red sweep, you expect the Chinese NPC meet to give out a larger stimulus to combat, and metals becomes a
But
buy.
that's a short-term buy.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we've tried and covered everything for you. The sentiment on the street, for some reason, is positive. We are excited about Trump from the look of it. If
The
you're a
markets
tra-
are,
The
of
markets
course.
are. If
Yeah.
you're a trader, I think IT is the trade that most people are picking up on this morning. And also the index itself is looking okay. We do expect the short covering rally could come to an end very soon, because we've done quite well. We've done 2.5%, 3% between yesterday and today. So all said and done, be as excited as the rest of the world as we watch this big event unravel.
Yeah, most definitely. Thanks for tuning in, guys.